And I was like, why doesn't my aunt want to look at this baby? And so she finally looked at the baby and she said, isn't this a beautiful baby? And my aunt said, no, that is an ugly baby and you need to stop feeding it meat.
What got you to the being that you are, and when did you realize that you were the way you are?
Okay, so we're gonna have to go back. So I had a jacked up childhood.
Okay.
Jacked up. And I was a victim of child abuse. And my father, he was an ex-pimp. He beat me as a child.
All right, so I'm still figuring out the intro, Jay. So
I'm just kind of
we'll work it out
right now. You decided to look all sexy and handsome and take your glasses off.
That's what you
So
had to come in there with
your
you had to come in
ageism on there.
you had to come in there with your Gucci and all
Well,
that
you
stuff.
came out with-
That's how it is. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Depending on where you are, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to The Opposite Me, where we bring you a higher perspective on things natural, things life, your everyday thing. And speaking of opposite of me, I have my brother, Jay.
JC all day.
JC all day. Who knew? But we all knew. And the reason I say we knew is, my God, we talked about this for years. And many of you guys may not believe me when I say we conceptualized the podcast, not the audio side of it, but the podcast with video years before Yar did it, before podcast was a podcast. And that brings me to the idea that sometimes when you're given an idea and you sit on it, the idea will be given to somebody else.
So true.
And my goodness, many people were given this idea. So we have so many people doing this idea. Jay, how do you feel about that, Jay? I know it's been a long time. And if you can make me tell the truth and call me a liar if I'm lying, but how long ago?
I'm going to say about 18 years at the minimum, this idea came to mind. And it was, I wanted it to be raw and uncut.
And I said,
you said you were very religious and the church, you didn't know how this church would accept
period.
That right there going on. Because the Fortraiture is very to himself and very enclosed and more about the people. If you to me at that time, you were more worried about your image than being able to share with the world.
Well, that's true. My God,
Some of these
that
things.
a little bit.
And me, I didn't give a what people thought about me because I'm just me. I'm gonna be me. This is the way God made me, and I'm like the opposite of you. If
True.
Just true opposites that were put together as brothers. So just the opposite, because you cared, I didn't care. And as time went forward, I started to think more why you cared.
Okay.
And I started to get a more understanding to me on why you cared. And then I had to look at myself and ask myself why I didn't care. You know, why it is that I can do and say and be who I am and not care what people thought about.
So as I was preparing for this last night, I was thinking like I needed to kind of go that direction and even ask you that question on what made you the way you are. And the funny part about it is that you know yourself.
Yes.
You know you don't have filters. you are living your life unapologetically. Obviously, we know we are opposite, but when we're talking about opposite, Jay, even you can be extreme.
Yes.
Extreme on all levels. You are like my opposite me for sure. My yin, my yang, the one who will say these things that I'm thinking and will never ever say them. But then I'll be in the room like, I know my brother's gonna say it. The fact that I'm thinking it, my brother's gonna say it. And of course, on the dime, it's like we can even communicate telepathically, and boom, you say it. And I look away like, why would he say such a thing? But it's out there. But anyway, bringing it back to the question, what made you aware? I know it sounds insulting the way I'm even asking you the way I'm, but I know you know my heart. What made you the way you are, and at what age did you realize that you were different?
Okay. So in my life, um, I I was I think once you are where you always are, a victim of child abuse. My dad was a pimp, which was a big time womanizer. He was ex-military. He was a drug dealer. He was a member of the Chosen Few motorcycle group. He was very big on music, but he was also a very abusive man. Um, he beat me as a child to a point that, um, let me go back. At this time, we had left the Southern Baptist Church and we had joined the Nation of Islam. And he was ruthless. Um, he had beat me to a point that I didn't have respect for my mother because in life, your first love, your first protector, your first everything is supposed to be your mother. And my mother, she didn't do any of those things. She didn't protect me from my dad. Um, she wasn't supportive. And so I didn't have trust in her. But fortunately, I have an Aunt Blanche who was like, she was raw. She was raw. She was uncut. And she didn't fear my dad. Didn't fear him at all. I remember many times she would pick me up from my house when I was all bruised up. And my dad would come to her house and come to pick me up. And he would like give me my son. And she was like, just tell him, come in my house, come get him, Eddie. Come and get him. You want him, come get him. And I think he knew that she would cut him up. I think he knew that she was not the one, you know? And she had become my first love. Well, she had become my protector. She had become my guardian angel. She was my everything. And I think a lot of the qualities that I have today is because of her. You know, she was ruthless. You didn't mess with her. One of my youngest memories is this girl was at Boys Market. It's an old store. And my sister, one of my sister's friends, and she had this baby in the stroller. And it was an ugly baby. I know people aren't supposed to think that babies are ugly, but that's some bull. There's some ugly babies in this world. And you know they're ugly because those are the ones that people have all those pictures of them on their phone today, and they constantly want to show them to you, but you don't want to look at them because you know they're ugly.
Again,
So,
I will not.
no, there's some very beautiful babies in this world, and you
Yes, I
see
agree
them.
to that.
But then there's some babies that should be protected by Greenpeace. You see them, but anyway. So I was probably 7. And, my aunt was in the store, and my sister was like, "I'm going to come look at this baby, look at this baby." I'm like, "Wait, I don't wanna look at this baby. I really don't wanna look at it." And she kept forcing my aunt to look at this baby. And I was like, "Why doesn't my aunt wanna look at this baby?" And so she finally looked at the baby, and she said, "Isn't this a beautiful baby?" And my aunt said, "No, that is an ugly baby, and you need to stop feeding it meat.
What?
You need to stop feeding it meat," is what she said.
Fact that you say
Like it was a pit bull,
it.
right?
Okay.
Like it was, and I remember looking in the stroller.
Why is this happening?
I was like, "Yeah, she is right. That is an ugly baby, but why would she say that to this girl and hurt this girl's feelings?" But it was just like she told her, "I don't wanna look at it," and she was forced to look at it. And my aunt was just ruthless, you know? And so throughout life, I remember these things that my aunt taught me growing up. And I remember also in my life, with all the abuse I went through a phase in my life where I didn't talk at all.
Okay. Wow.
I didn't speak for about 9 months to a year. I just didn't speak. And then I think when I did start to speak again, it was like, I have a lot to say.
Wow. Okay. I see the transition.
I have a lot to say, and I'm going to say it, and no one's going to stop me from saying it. So, you know, I also grew up in a house where we went to the dozens a lot, talked about each other endlessly. I grew up in a time where we bagged on each other, we capped on each other, and kids would make me cry because they would cap on me because of my nose, because I have a big nose. And one of the things that hurt me the most was one of my kids' friends called me Snuffleupagus, right? You can't call a kid with a big nose Snuffleupagus. And you know what?
Ah, I can't even pronounce it. Snuffleupagus.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember crying at my mom, and my mom was like, "So what else do they have on you that can hurt your feelings?"
Wow.
And I was like, "It's just my nose. It's big." And my mom was like, "So this is my parents divorced. Blessing God they did. But this is when we were living in the hood." And she was like, "So you now have to take them talking about your nose and learn things about your opponents, the kids who talk about you, and strengthen yourself because they're going to talk about your nose. But you got to strengthen yourself, and find out things about them." So I used to have a little folder, and I would take notes on all my friends, and I would take notes on people who were capping on me, and when people would laugh at me. Then one day, I I, I, I released those notes in the world. I remember one of these kids saying, "That's why I was Edward back then. That's why Ed got this big nose." I was like, "That's why your daddy left your mama for this other woman that picked him up in the Mercury." And they were like, "What? Oh, but your nose is big. That's why your mama had to borrow sugar from us every day because y'all don't have enough food in your house to support you." They were like, But what about your nose? Well, what about you wearing them same pants that you wore yesterday? I marked them, and I know they're the same pants, and you didn't
Wow.
wash them.
Kids can be tough, man.
So when they were talking about my nose, I was hitting them with reality. And kids stopped talking about my nose because they know I was coming hard in the paint. But that was like the start of being real. And as I got older, my mom used to come with these phrases, little phrases from back in the day. And one of the phrases was, the squeaky wheel gets the
To
oil.
get some appreciate.
Closed mouths don't get fed. A man who doesn't stand for something will fall for anything.
Yeah.
You know, and hearing these things as I was growing up in time, I started to learn that my voice had meaning.
Okay.
I learned that it had meaning.
And this is around what time? High school? Post high school or
About, I'm gonna say 12th grade.
12th grade? Okay.
12th grade.
Senior. Okay.
12th grade, because I was in 12th grade, and I was working at Target, and I was dating this woman who was like 24.
Jeez.
And but God,
It's okay.
but around then, I started to learn what my voice was able to do. I started to learn then, why do I have to keep my mouth quiet when I see things or feel things, or why do I have to be filtered? Because when you're filtered, people can shuffle your words.
Create a reality off you, your narrative for you.
You can say one thing when you're filtered, and they can
Interpret it, whatever.
whatever they want. However, it's like this generation, and when they text each other, when you can say something in a text and you can mean it one way,
Yeah.
right? And then they can take it a totally different way and run with it, and start instead of the way that you gave it to them.
Right.
But when you say what you mean, how you mean it, whether it's hurting someone's feelings, I don't care if it's hurting your feelings. I really don't. You have to know how I'm coming at it and what I am saying. I know people say there's a nicer way you can say it. Yeah, you can tell someone to shut up in a nice way. Oh, can you please be quiet?
Okay.
Or how about we not say that?
Hmm.
But if you say to somebody, shut up,
They shut up.
they're understanding exactly. And it's not, people say, oh, that's just rude, or you're just rude. Well, I'm not rude. I am me. Just because you're afraid to tell the people how you feel and tell the world how you feel doesn't mean that I'm afraid to tell the world how I feel. I'm a 6'3.5", 270-pound black man.
The 12th grade. How tall were you? How big were you?
12th grade, I was 170 pounds. I was size 14 shoe. I had a big nose. I had a jacked up. No,
Height. How tall were you already?
I was probably at 6 feet.
Already, yeah. Wow.
Close to that
Senior
area.
12, yeah.
But I was skinny.
Okay.
I was skinny, and I didn't have that size that people were gonna
Yeah,
not
okay.
want to beat
Oh,
me
here he
up.
comes. Okay.
I didn't have the size that people weren't going to beat me up. They didn't, but I didn't have it. But I also carried my way in a way, self in a way that if you're gonna bring it, bring it. If you're not gonna bring it, shut up.
And you told me something a while ago. You had a very good protector. You said people were afraid of this one person.
Well, was it Oz? Oz was the people who were afraid of in high school.
No, this is a superhero. You said somebody. I mean, whenever they messed with you, they knew if somebody was coming to school, it was going on. Even teachers were scared of this person.
Well, and my sister. But this person, Oz people were scared of. That was the most feared person.
I think it said your mom.
Well, that was in my mother.
Oh, it's like junior high. I mean, earlier.
My mother, after my father divorced, they divorced. Um, did what she could to make up for what she couldn't do when my dad was in the house. When I was being physically abused, my mother was being mentally abused. And that I didn't understand until I got older. And I still wish to this day, now this may sound wrong to some people, but I don't care. To this day, I wish my dad would have beat the hell out of my mom the same way he beat the hell out of us. I say this because when I was physically abused, you can see my scars start to go away. You can see the healing starting to take place with the scabs
Wow.
or the bruises coming down. When a person mentally abuses someone,
Yeah,
you
the scars.
you
You
don't
don't
know.
see them.
You don't know when they are. And I think to this day, my mother is still scarred. But I feared my mom growing up because she would beat the hell out of us when we messed up. You know, this is during that era where your parents would have your grandfather's belt. You can, you can get hit with a switch.
Anything that was on
I got
site.
hit with extension cords, brooms, a couple of skillets. So it was that time where these things happened. But my mother and I, even with all that, and I earned 75 to 8% of those beatings, don't get me wrong.
Not that I condone what he's terming abuse. No, I don't. But speaking of that, I mean, I met your mom, loving woman, and she is a straight shooter too. She's straight shooter. She says what she says too, and she means what she means. Loving woman,
There it is.
lovely woman too.
But
Um,
we always had good conversations. We always sat down and talked about things.
and did y'all get a moment to reflect? As a grown man now, with a beautiful son, Jordan. Shout out Jordan. Um, did you get a moment to reflect and go back to some of the things that may
Yeah,
have transpired in the past?
yeah, we did.
That's awesome.
But no. But my mom doesn't see this.
No to what?
No, she doesn't see this.
No, then don't say it.
No, I'm gonna say it because
Disclaimer.
it's probably better for her to see this than, and she can get a better understanding.
Okay. Wow.
A few years ago on New Year's, um, I invited my wife's in-laws and my in-laws, my family, my mother, my stepdad, over to the house for New Year's. And I always felt like I was the least important of all the children. My mother would call me and just ask me questions about my older sister. It was like she was only calling to lead to ask questions about my sister. My mother would call me to ask me about other people. My mother would come a city before mine to visit my younger sister and not visit me. So I felt like I was the least important. And to this day, I still feel like I'm the least important of the children. And she she and I spoke. We spoke in the living room, not the kitchen, about what I was feeling. And my mother explained to me that she was ashamed. Now, she was ashamed of what happened to me as a youth, that she wasn't able to protect me, and she couldn't look at me sometime because of the shame that she went through. And even though she was trying to have her moment, it wasn't her time to have her moment. And sometimes as parents, we sometimes forget or don't think that when our children are speaking to us about their feelings, it's not our time
Mm,
to express to them how we feel as
mm.
parents.
I get what you mean.
It's not our time. If your child is ready at 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 30, 40 to express things to you, it's not your time as a parent to tell them how you feel. It's your time as a parent to listen. It's your time to listen to what your child is saying, what your child has gone through, your child expressing his or her hurt. It's your time to listen. It's not about you at that moment. When I spoke to my mom, she turned it and made it about her, which told me she didn't hear me. She didn't hear me. She wasn't hearing how I felt. And how do I know to this day that she didn't know? She didn't hear me as I was expressing it, because she still does the same thing today as she did before. Now, she taught me to speak. She taught me to express myself. She taught me to be honest. She taught me to be part of this man that I am. But at the same time, sometimes the teacher had to be the student. You hit this point when the teacher had to be the student, and they need to hear from the student or where some of the lessons were lost between the teacher and the student.
That's deep.
You know,
That's deep.
there's every lesson that is being taught cannot be taught to every student the same way. You can teach a student math, this student math this way, but this student here might not get it because he had to be taught a different way.
Right.
And you have to hear from the student on why they're not picking up on why you were teaching this, so you can work it down to them. Well, my mother was teaching me these things, teaching me to be verbal, teaching me to respect others, and teaching me to be strong, and teaching me to be all these things. I'm looking at this woman who was not verbal for a while, who was weak, who was not supportive of her son who needed that extra strength. And after that conversation, we were good for years. We were good for like a month before I was put on the back burner again. And so for me, I just went, it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to live on the back burner with her. Because for everyone else that I know, who I love, who I care for, who knows me, I'm on the front burner.
On the positive note, because to me, the stand-up person that you are, that I know you are, to me comes from a good upbringing. And hear me out when I say this. Growing up in LA, the most expected thing is, to be honest, is joining a gang, which you were shielded off. And I've never ever heard you speak of sets or being part of a group or anything like that. You seem like you were a standalone guy. And you fought for yours, and you came out good.
I wasn't allowed to join the gang. My older sister was a gangbanger, 59th Street Hoover Crips. And she was a gangbanger. And
So she protected you from joining, or
my mother protected from joining.
shout out mama.
She was saying if I would join, she would have to go to all the meetings. And the gangbangers respected my mom. The gangbangers, it's a different time and era. They respected my mom. They made her Mother's Day breakfast. All these gangbangers in the kitchen making Mother's Day breakfast. They would watch All My Children, General Hospital, Luke and Laura's Story in the living room. Gangbangers watching the soap operas in your living room is something else.
It's laughable, eh?
No, because these are like games, not like today's gangbangers. These are the ones that would run through your backyard with the police chasing them. You know, you gotta, no one you couldn't be in your living room when nighttime came because your windows could get sprayed. And these were like those guys who would tell us as kids, you need to be in the house. I don't want you outside after this time of day. We're the street light generation. Street lights came on, you had to be inside. Don't answer the door for nobody. But my mother, who she was, here's the funny thing. My mother was more of a mother to the streets than she was to me. She was more of a mother for the streets. I would hear kids, even to the day, I'll hear her say, I took my grandkids to Jamaica and I took my grandkids here. I don't even know who the hell these kids are. They're not my family. Kids are calling her grandma and auntie. They're not my family. I don't know them. They didn't come from any of my relatives. So to the streets, my mother was their mother. And okay, these kids needed a mother figure. Same time, I would have loved to have had a mother figure also. One who, to this day, would have made me feel important.
Gotcha. Now, when I speak to a lot of off camera, obviously, when I speak to a lot of young gentlemen who, or rather mothers too, they have this one consistent thing they always say: we can't leave the hood because we're born here. We're gonna die here. But most of them mourn some of their kids. I spoke to a lady who lost 3 of her sons, and she's like, "Yeah, And I asked the painful question, and it may have come off wrong, but I was in my genuine self. I said, "Why don't you move?" And she got emotional and said, "You will never understand why they can't move." And perhaps I don't. I still don't.
When the slaves were granted freedom, um, the slave masters believed, and they said, it's okay. They are going to come back to us. They don't know how to live. They don't know how to take care of themselves. They don't know how to act. We've been taking care of them while they've been working in the fields. They need to be beat to be taught. They will never be able to prosper because they will need us. And a lot of the slaves, when slavery ended, became indentured servants. A lot of the slaves, or it's like when the master was sick, and the slave would say, "Master, we sick."
That part. How is we when it's him?
We hurt master. They would send slaves out to go catch other slaves on slave train. And they would be escaping, and then some slaves would come back not because of the joy of being free, because the joy of they didn't know how to take care. They didn't feel like they didn't know how to take care of themselves. They didn't know what to do when they received freedom. In the hood, many individuals in the hood, not all of them,
Mhm.
many don't believe they can get out.
Or shouldn't.
Why should you when your mom lives in the same house that your grandmother stayed in, or the same apartment that your grandmother stayed in? And that's all they know. And that's all you know. Sometimes they believe it's all they know. They don't think that they deserve better or they can get.
Is it that, or is there a little bit of fear in the sense that when you move to a suburb, you may have to adhere to certain rules and regulations?
But there's rules and regulations in
Oh,
the
there's
hood.
more rules and regulations in the hood for sure. I know.
There's more
But
rules.
the different type of rules that you have to abide by, I'm just throwing out, is it a possibility
You know,
apart from the loyalty?
for me to get out the hood,
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I belonged in there.
Well, yeah, you've said that a lot.
I didn't feel like I belonged there. I didn't feel like that was for me. I didn't have that mentality of, I'm here, so I have to stay here. This is where I'm going to be, and this is where I'm going to die. I told myself I would never die here.
So is it dreaming big that caused you to be like that? Because I know you've always been a dreamer.
This dreaming, period.
Gotcha.
It doesn't have to be a big dream to get
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
there.
yeah.
That's a drink.
I can be.
And I always think, here's the truth. Here's a funny thing. Every year, I go to Rialto, to a neighborhood where I grew up in. I go to visit the Shamrocks. I go into Glenwoods. I go to ABC's. I go to Jackson Street, Willow. I go over to the Meridians. I go just to these other areas where times were hard, but it was also a place that made me meet. Right? I go there to to remind myself.
Oh, so I made a mistake. I thought LA, so it was Rialto.
I was in LA at first. Then we moved to Rialto. But I go there to remind myself to continue to do better.
Wow, that's different. Do you take your son there too?
Yes, I've taken him there to continue to do better. This is where I came from. And one day, one of my trips there, I was walking through the ABCs, and I heard my name.
No.
And it's just like 10, 20 years after I moved out of there, I heard my name. And I was like, you know, and I kept walking. And I heard my name again. And I turned back. And it was a young man, older man then, who I grew up with,
Oh,
who is now living in his mother's apartment, who was in that same neighborhood, that same surrounding, that same background. And he didn't grow.
oh wow.
He chose to be there.
Chose to stay.
He chose to stay there. So anybody, for me, anybody can come out the hood. Is it going to be easy? No.
Okay.
No. But it's easier if you have the mentality and the thought wide frame. It's easier to leave the hood than it is to live in it. It's easier to leave it.
Than to live in it. And I hope this goes out to somebody, man.
Because financially, it's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard,
you gotta take a beating.
but if it's just you by yourself,
But
fine, stay there. But if you brought life into this world,
do whatever you can.
to get out of there.
Gotcha.
Our job as parents is to make sure that when we leave this earth,
Mhm.
that our children
Better off.
are better off than we were, that they are smarter than we were, that they are better individuals than we are, not to leave this earth and leave our children being exactly the way we are. When you have children in the hood and it's not a good neighborhood, and you teach your kid that this is where you're supposed to be because I'm here and your generation before you was here. When
You
you leave,
selling out when you leave.
and you're leaving your kid in the same situation that you were in, that's not right for them. They didn't ask for this. They didn't ask for this. They asked to come into a loving family
Right.
who's caring for them, going to support them.
Okay.
And just be amazing role models for them.
How big is exposure? In the sense that, because I'll speak to some cats and they'll be like, man, Uncle Jesse over there, he had a Cadillac and all zooped up and, he became my role model. And I wanted to be like him because they had no other person to pair up what they would deem successful than Uncle Jesse, who was a street corner hustler and did very well. He had money, gave out money, you know.
But what did Uncle Jesse in the end
Yeah, same story.
do for that neighborhood?
Well, apart from that, three-way, right? Prison, casket, or
You know, my role model in the hood, I have this friend, he's named Dewan. And I love Dewan. It's my brother. My role model in the hood was his stepdad. And Arnold's stepdad was my other role model. Arnold's stepdad always wore coveralls, like a train conductor's coveralls, blue ones, or with the stripes. And I loved him. And Duan's stepdad worked for Coca-Cola. And the reason they were
honest living.
my role models in the hood is because they were the only dads there.
Have you ever read? We drop books on this podcast, and the book that's coming to mind right now. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
No, I haven't.
All right, we'll drop a link below. Another hit.
Okay.
Because it's juxtaposing exactly what you're saying. And back to what you were saying.
But they were the only dads in it. True dads. I would go with Duan's house and he's like, "What up, Stretch?" Because I stretched and got taller than everyone else. I couldn't play basketball. To this day, I can't play basketball. Can't play to save my life. But he used to play basketball with us. He would talk to us about life. He would talk to us about anything. And Arnold's stepdad, would do the same thing. And it was just seeing these positive black men talk to us and spend time with us, explain to us that we can be successful in anything we want to be successful in. Make sure we ate, make sure we worked hard, make sure we were getting our homework done and playing our sports and everything else. They were my role models because they didn't have to talk to us.
I got you.
It wasn't like their wives forced them to talk to us. It's not like they couldn't have sat in front of a TV and drank a beer and just told us to shut up and go away. And
Right.
they took the time to talk to these young black men.
See what I am so you can be that.
And they were my role models.
I see that.
They were also the leaders on the pullers, the individuals who helped pull me out and didn't hold me down.
So that's that exposure. So exposure is critical.
Yes.
Being exposed to something
time.
greater than what meets the eye.
That it was key.
I got
it was
you.
key. Fathers don't understand how important we are.
Yeah.
I don't think we really take a grasp or a true understanding of our importance. Yeah. My son, my stepson, who is my son, I'm hard on him. I'm extremely hard on
Okay.
him.
Healthy heart.
I make sure his chores are done. I get on him for not being on schedule. I get on him when he doesn't do correct the things he's supposed to do. I get on him, and it reminds me of when I was in Los Angeles, and my mother had beat the hell out of me. I got the shit beat out of me, and my older sister said, "That's not right. You know that's child abuse." I was like, "What's child abuse?" And she was telling me what child abuse is. And she's like, "You can call the police, and and mom will get arrested for beating you." Like, what? And she picked up the phone and she dialed the number and handed me the phone. I was like, mom's is going down. And I talked to the police, and
You actually called the cops.
I didn't call. My older sister called the police, but I spoke to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in my room and I heard a knock on the door, and I was so excited. Like, yes, Satan's going down. And police opened the door. My mom opened the door. There were 2 police officers. And they're like, "We got a call from this house that your son, you was beating your kids and blah, 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 and all this stuff." And then my mom called me out of my room, and I weaseled my way out the room to the door. She's like, "Oh, bricks." Like, I thought I was, hell yeah, the police, there's 2 officers right here. Like, yeah, you beat me. And they were like, "Ma'am, see your son." And my mom looked at these 2 officers. This is one of those stories I'll never forget. Even though I say she wasn't there a lot, she was there first. And she pointed at the officer. She goes, "You know why I beat my son?" And he was like, "Why?" "So you guys don't in the future." Ooh. I beat my son when he's messing up. I do this when he doesn't listen. I do this to keep him in check. I do this because he's going to be right when he grows
No.
up.
You got to say that quote again. We got to
Beat him.
highlight.
I beat him.
So
So
y'all don't
you
have to.
don't in the future.
My God.
And she chewed the police officers off. And the officers looked at me and said, "Come here." I was like, "Yes." The officer looked at me in my face and said, "Don't you ever call the police on your mother ever again. She is taking care of you. She feeds you. She does all these things." And they looked at her and they got down chewing me out and they went, "We're so sorry for coming by, ma'am. You have yourself a great day." And they left. And I went in my room and she beat me again for calling the police.
Do the whole neighborhood thing. Auntie comes over. You did what?
I remember my bedroom window was open. All my friends heard it.
Oh man.
But I'd never been in the back of a police car.
Yeah.
I've never had a police record.
No handcuffs?
I have been handcuffed. And I've been thrown on top of a police car.
Yikes.
But that was the 80s police. That had nothing to do with me.
Totally different.
And so going all the way back, I chewed my kid up. I've never beat him.
Yeah.
I've never hit him. I've never spanked him. I've never done any of these things. But I'm in his ass. And I tell him the same thing my mother tells me. I'm in your rear so often that the police would never be in your rear. I'm hard on you because I want you to be successful. I want you to do great things. I don't want you to ever slip and give them a reason to hurt you.
Speaking of police officers and obviously experiencing the LA cops, and coming out this way. I mean, either way, police are police. What is your experience? What is your view? Is there any trauma related to police encounter as a young black man?
As a young black man who was doing things that I was supposed to do, who wasn't hanging out with knuckleheads, my mother made sure I didn't do that. As a young black man who has been harassed by the police in the 80s, I don't have a problem with the police. They have a job to do. They have a job and responsibility to do. There's going to be good police, there's going to be bad police in this world. Just like there's going to be good and bad people. I'll tell you a story later on some other time about my meetings with them, but I have a lot of respect for someone who gets in a police car every day who is not guaranteed to come home alive.
That part. And those are the same people we call when we are in distress. Like it's guaranteed that they will show up at your doorstep.
Yes.
When you call them. That's key. Now, different subject altogether. Earlier in the conversation, you talked about, you said a term. You said, your cousins, brothers, and sisters, just bad kids in the neighborhood. You said they will cap on you.
Yes.
And I was like, let me interject because Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they have turned cap to something totally different.
No.
Are you aware?
Yeah, I am.
So it's like, how you feel about that?
I think it's funny that
Cap has changed.
I think it's funny that they they're a confused generation. They are so confused. I feel so bad for this younger generation, the generation who doesn't go outside. Who doesn't go outside, who can't speak to each other, who can be sitting next to each other and they're
text each
texting
other.
each other into the talk.
Now they're starting to talk in text. Do you know that? I was talking to some teenagers, last week, and they were teaching me. I was in class. They were teaching me about the words that they're using. And obviously, cap, I knew cap had changed, so cap is not a negative word. Now it's cap is lying. But something like aura farming. I'm like, okay, first of all, aura does not mean what you're saying. Aura was already in the dictionary. Farming is by far in the dictionary.
Yes.
But now you calling somebody aura farming as if they're seeking attention. Why didn't you just say that?
Why can't you just say I need attention? Well, they're looking for attention. It's
man, yeah.
it scares me because I work in a public school setting, and I tell my youth in the school, you do know you are the future.
Right.
And many of them don't have that concept. They don't have the concept that we're going to be gone. They don't
Those are
have
the future judges, future teachers, future
exactly.
pilots, but they can't even get a language right.
It scares me. It scared me that they have all this technology. It's the greatest time ever with
Oh, man.
technology.
Age of knowledge
They have it.
at their disposal.
Because what will we have done with it?
Oh, man, come on, man.
What will we have done with it? We're from a generation
Encyclopedia,
where
library.
TV went off.
True. Facts.
11, 12 o'clock, Johnny Carson, and the national anthem would come on and TV went off and came back on at 6 o'clock in the
There
morning.
you go.
We only had 20 stations if we include in UHF, VHF, and UHF. So,
And depending on what country you were in, some actually have one channel. Yeah.
so this generation has so much,
Yeah, they do so little.
but they don't really know what they have.
So it's like, where do they go from here? And then speaking of that, funny enough, I travel a lot. And I wanted to ask you about your trip to Mexico because you really advertised it too. I mean, next time take me with you. But the last time I was in England, not too long ago, like in December, right? And I was just chatting up with this Uber driver, and he started talking about the language, just how the Gen Zs off over there have come up with their own language, Jay. Like the same way we have our own languages, at least American kids know when to turn it on and turn it off. Credit to them. In the UK, everything is like, yo, bruv. For example, they'll say something like, "Mun's not in this." Like, so you're like, "Mun's not in it." What are you talking about? Mun's not in it. Translation: I am not interested.
Yeah, I understood that.
Yeah, but it's like, come on, why don't you just say that? I am not interested. Mun's not in it, bruv. I heard this, and I fell off my chair and I laughed. I'm still laughing today. They say skibbity toilet. Skibbity toilet, that's one. They say lore. They say motion. I mean, it's like, where does it stop? The one that gets me the most is using names as emotions. For example, when they say something is crazy, they'll say something is what? Bob or Joe? I mean, no, don't quote me, but they use names to reference emotions or how they feel.
I like some of the things that they're doing, and I don't understand some of the things they're doing. We've always changed lingo and language since the beginning of time. To us, things make sense. To them, it may make sense, but they're kind of weird now with some of the things that they're doing. But we were weird what we did because our
That's true.
parents used to say,
We were
"What the hell
weird.
are we talking about?"
What are you talking about? And I discovered, I was just doing the math. It looks like the iteration happens around high school. Like every high school generation, like junior high, high school, every senior years, there's a language that is like created and then it flips. It flips. Cause I'll be talking to some teenagers and they'll be like, oh man, even cap seem like it's old now to them, which is it's funny how things change. And then some of the slang that I tell them that we used to speak on, they can't believe it. And it's like old. Yeah, it's fine. Some of them, they laugh at me and say, stop saying that because it don't suit you. So I don't try to speak their language because I look like an old head trying to speak a certain way. Segue to the part where I always ask this question on this podcast. If you were to look at Jay in the mirror, you pick an age, what would you say to him? And what would he say to you?
If I was to look at the 7-year-old Jay,
7-year-old Jay. Gotcha.
I would tell him, continue to hide in the closet. Continue to...
I don't even know whether to laugh at that or
No.
try to be serious,
No,
but I'm
no.
like,
When
continue
I
to
say
hide it.
laugh, when I say hide in the closet, I used to hide from my dad when he came home in the closet. I had a little door in my closet I used to hide into when he came home. So I would tell him, continue to hide in the closet. I would tell him the pain that he's enduring will be over
Okay.
soon. I would tell him all white people aren't bad, as I was learning in the Nation of Islam when I was a kid.
Okay.
I would tell him tell your mother how you feel every day
Earlier.
earlier than waiting till you were in your 50s.
Right.
And I think the younger Jay would tell the older Jay, it's okay to love.
Wow. No toughen up.
It would just don't be afraid to love.
Hmm.
Don't, just because what you saw at home wasn't loving with your mother and father, don't be afraid to love. I think he would tell me, it's okay to love. It's okay to cry.
I got you.
Yeah.
And on that note, it has been a pleasure
Always.
having not just a regular guest, but my brother Jay, one of the few people I can count on. If I say, let's do this, if he says yes, it's happening. If he says wait, that's him really saying it's not possible. But when he says yes, and I'm not shooting shots to whoever, you know what I mean? You know. And if the shoe fits, lace on. But he's one of the few. If I say, hey, let's do this, it's
We're going to do it.
If I say what time, it's 11 o'clock, it's 10:30. And I said, and I appreciate you. I've never, no, I think I have. Because I was about to say, I've never told you how much I appreciate you. But it's one of the things that I'm making a point that you know that I appreciate you. And we're not afraid. I love you, bro.
I love you. You're my
And
brother.
we've always said it. Ain't no shame in it. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Ain't no toughen up in it, because we're here for a split second and we're out. But while we're here, I got my brother's back.
I got yours. It's what we do.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, do so, please. Statistics show that the majority of you guys that watch the show are not subscribed. Stick around. There's more from where that came from. See you on the next one. Shop, shop.